Now, do I have Trudy here?
Yes, Judge.
Excellent. And is it Davina?
Yes, Judge.
Only there is another party who isn't here yet. A criminal, a four-legged criminal. Who am I talking about, Trudy?
George.
Exactly. We may have to hear from George in due course, but before we do... In August 2016, you brought little George home, correct?
Correct.
And he was lovely and sweet and bouncy, correct?
Correct.
And his bark was worse than his bite. Is that about right?
That's about right, Judge.
And you brought him up terribly well. And one of the things that you did, you trained him by putting him in a puppy cage, correct?
Correct.
Now, what does that mean, so people understand, please?
So that generally means that when you leave the house, you are left with a sofa, the contents of your fridge.
What do you mean, the contents of the fridge? You mean your dog goes to the fridge and lets himself sort of have the beer and the food and the drink and that sort of thing? There are you come back from work and you're sitting there, and he's decided to set himself free amongst all of the shopping.
Correct, Judge.
What do you mean? You mean you can go and get... What are you talking about?
He can open the fridge and retrieve items from the fridge, Judge.
Let's have a look.
Good boy.
Yes, all right, we're not on BGT. Now, there he is, but he's also somebody that likes to chew things, correct?
Correct, Judge.
And you knew this, did you not, Trudy?
I knew he could be naughty. I didn't know he could chew things.
Well, he's a dog.
Deliberately.
So here's the thing. When you said you knew he could be naughty, it wasn't like, you understand, he would run across the road or that sort of thing, or not pay his taxes, madam. Yes?
Yes, Judge.
Or drive without a licence. Can't drive, can you? Judge. Being naughty, if you're a dog, an actual dog, means doing naughty things, like chewing things, correct?
Correct.
And if he's not in his cage and he's out, he's always bounding around, and he's chewed all sorts of things. What sort of things of yours has he chewed?
Mainly shoes.
Now, Trudy, you were aware of this when you were asked to care for little George, correct?
Correct.
And you moved into their house when they went to where? You went to Lanzarote, correct? You showed up at their house with a suitcase, I would have thought, with your clothes in, and how many pairs of shoes?
One.
Just the one? You weren't going to leave the house then very often?
Well, not while I was looking after George, apart from going to work.
Where was the dog going to be?
In his cage.
Understood, which is part of the way you've brought him up, and that's to protect your property. And he's never in it for terribly long, just about the right amount of time.
Yes,
anyway, there he was. And in June, you came back to the house, and what did you discover?
No, I didn't come back to the house,
Oh,
Judge.
where were you?
I was there. I was watching Emmerdale.
You were watching what?
I was watching Emmerdale.
Just pause for a second. She was watching Emmerdale.
Uh-huh.
What were you having for dinner?
I can't remember.
Oh, I just wondered. I thought we'd just have a conversation about complete irrelevancies. Now, here's the thing that I want to understand. Before Mum was in the house, did you give her any special instructions in respect of George?
I did, Judge.
Such as, putting it down in big, what did you write?
So I advised my mum not to leave the dog unattended and told her that he could not be trusted.
Well, don't leave the dog unattended is one thing, but in the normal looking after of a dog, it has to be reasonable that she, for example, can go to bed and act like a reasonable human being, and the dog will act like a dog. Do you understand? So you can't be in permanent supervision of an animal unless you're married to one. Do you understand? Correct?
Correct, Judge.
Did she tell you you had to be permanently vigilant?
She said not to leave him alone.
Not to leave him alone at all?
No, to watch him.
Well, you can't sit there watching him all the time. What was the second thing?
He's trouble.
What do you mean that he's trouble? Has he joined a gang?
No, Judge. He wanders off on his own and gets himself into trouble. He puts his nose into everything and anything that he can.
Now, were you permanently vigilant?
Most of the time.
Except on one occasion when you were at home with your milk and your dinner and whatever it was, and you were watching Emmerdale. And you were so consumed by that marvellous soap opera that you didn't have your eye on the dog.
No, Judge, I
Correct?
didn't.
Was it a particularly compelling storyline?
It possibly was.
Was there a dangerous dingle at the time? Anyway, you weren't concentrating because of Emmerdale, and then the next thing you turned to George, correct?
Yes.
And what did George have in his mouth?
This, Judge.
Don't be stupid. Stay and watch the best Judge Rinder moments. And I'm talking. Understood? Don't be a moron. Subscribe to Judge Rinder YouTube channel. Right now. That's an order.